So this is task 2 for Algebra 2, and remember that the notes should be printed out from my locker so that you can follow along using the notes. Just a few facts about division. I really want to go quickly through this. I'm trying to get it all into one video. Things to remember. One is that A over B, the fraction, is the same thing as A divided by B. That fraction bar just means divided by. And you can break that out into A times 1 over B. And remember that B can't be 0 because you cannot divide by 0. And similarly, A plus B over C is the same thing as A over C plus B over C. You can break it out. Or A minus B over C is A over C minus B over C. And again, C can't be 0. If two numbers have the same sign, their quotient is positive. If they have opposite signs, their quotient is negative, just like with products. And the quotient A over 0 is always undefined. You cannot divide by 0. Okay. Now, we are going to, we don't have to use order of operations, but in this one I kind of want to. So I want to simplify everything in the numerator first and then everything in the denominator first. So 24 divided by a negative 3 obviously is going to give us a negative number. So that's going to be negative 8. Then we've got multiplication and division. We're going to go from left to right, so we're going to do the multiplication first. So that gives us negative 20 divided by 2. Okay, so that gives us negative 8 over, well, negative 20 divided by 2 is negative 10. A negative over a negative is a positive, so this is 8/10, but we could also reduce this to 4 over 5. So this is positive 4/5. Okay. I would like you to do this one as a you try, so go ahead and hit pause and give it a try and then come back. This one's a little bit challenging, but it's not too bad as long as you go slowly. Okay. So the first thing I'm going to do is make these denominators the same. We need a common denominator. So negative 12 times, we'll make them both fourths. So it's negative 3/4 minus 2/4. The other thing I'm going to do, when we divide by negative 10, that's the same thing as multiplying by negative 1/10. So because we're multiplying by the reciprocal of negative 10. Negative 1/10. Okay, so now let's simplify this. This is negative 12 times negative 5/4 over, well, we can simplify here. The 5 and the 10 cancel and we get a 2 here. So this is negative 1 over 18. So this is equal to, now this 12 is the same thing as 12 over 1. Our 12 and our 4 cancel, and we get a negative 3 there. So negative 3 times negative 5 is positive 15. So now we have 15 divided by negative 1 over 18. When you divide, it's the same thing as multiplying by the reciprocal. So this is the same thing as 15 times 18 over negative 1, or just a negative 18. So 15 times 18 is 270, so this is negative 270. All right, now let's look at the steps for solving one variable equations. The first step is to collect your like terms on both sides. So just collect this or combine like terms. The second step is to get the variables all on one side by using your operations. And we'll go into that in greater detail when we do our examples. The third is to isolate the variables, so there's only one variable term on one side. using plus and minus to do that, and then the next step is to just have one variable, so you have to divide or multiply. These should be very familiar to you, but we're going to go back over them. Now, the thing that we're adding here, you've seen this before in Algebra 1, but we're adding some vocabulary here. If a solution is never true, there is no solution. So if you get an equation like 6 equals 4 that's not true, then that means there's no solution. What's new is that we call this the empty or null set, and it looks like this. And you can draw that instead of saying null set if you'd like. If the solution is always true, the solution is all real numbers and the equation is called an identity. So when it's always true in a one variable equation, the solution is all real numbers, and because it's always true, we call it an identity. Alright, now I've taken some sample problems from your book. So let's give these a try. We're going to solve this first one. So we've got, first I'm going to apply the distributive property so that then I can combine like terms. So we have 3y minus 2y. Now remember to distribute your negative. Negative 2 times negative 1 is positive 2 over 6 equals negative 1. Now I could have done this other step next first, or I can do it now. I'm going to multiply both sides by 6. So then we have 3y minus 2y plus 2 equals negative 6. I probably should have done that first. That's okay. 3y minus 2y, if we combine these like terms, that gives us y plus 2 equals negative 6, and then I want just one y, or I want y all by itself on this side, so I'm going to subtract the 2 and get y all by itself, and y equals negative 8. Okay, now I'd like to make this a u-try, so go ahead and pause and then come back and see what I did. There are two ways you could do this. You could either divide both sides by 1.6, or you could distribute the 1.6. I'm going to distribute the 1.6. 1.6 times 2 is 3.2 times t. 1.6 times negative 1 is negative 1.6. Okay, now I'm going to isolate my variable. I want the variable term all by itself, so I'm going to add 1.6 to both sides. 3.2t equals 16. Okay, how many times does 3.2 go into 16? You can do the long division with the decimal, but I think if you guess and check, you can realize that 5 times 3 is 15 and 5 times 0.2 is 1, and those add to 16, so t equals 5. Alright, now we've got an example where we use a formula. You'll see formulas a lot in your problems. Sometimes there are formulas they expect you to know already, and sometimes they'll give you the formula. In this case, we're solving for h, so we can plug in v equals 48 and r equals 4, and then what's left is h, the variable that's left, and we want to solve for that. Solving for a variable means getting it all by itself on the left or the right, but getting it all by itself and just one of that variable. So I'm going to go ahead and substitute in my v and my r. This is the volume of a cone. Volume equals 1/3 pi radius squared times height. So v volume equals 48 equals 1/3 pi times r squared. 4 squared is 16 times h. Now I want that h all by itself. I just want one h. I'm going to combine my fraction. 48 equals 16/3 pi times h. Let's multiply both sides by 3/16 to get rid of that fraction on the right. Now 48 happens to be 3 times 16, so that cancels and this becomes 9 equals pi times h. Now to get h all by itself, all I have to do is divide both sides by pi.